Hello everyone, welcome to today's video lecture of object-oriented programming using Java. The paper code is CS504A. This is Shayani Chandra, Assistant Professor of Department of Computer Science and Engineering of Guru Nanak Institute of Technology. Let's look at today's lecture contents. Today we will learn about method overriding that is applicable in inheritance. Then we will learn how method overriding can be applied in order to achieve dynamic method dispatch or runtime polymorphism. And last but not the least, we will learn the abstract keyword which is applicable before a class or before a method in case of inheritance. So let's move on to the first topic of our today's lecture, which is method overriding. Before going into the details of method overriding, let me first describe what is the definition of method overriding. In a class hierarchy, when a method in a subclass has the same name and type signature as a method in its superclass, then the method in the subclass is said to override the method in the superclass. When an overridden method is called from within its subclass, it will always refer to the version of that method defined by the subclass, and the version of the method defined by the superclass will be hidden. So this is what method overriding actually means. Now let us do a simple program to make you understand the concept of method overriding and how it can be implemented in case of inheritance. So this is a simple program that demonstrates the concept of method overriding in inheritance. This is the superclass, which is class A. These two variables I and j are the two instance variables of the class A. This is the parameterized constructor for the class A. These are the parameters of the constructor A. And inside this parameterized constructor, the value assignments are taking place. The value of A will be assigned into the instance variable I, and the value of B will be assigned into the instance variable J. Then a method show is there which will just print the values of I and J. After that, we have defined a subclass B. Extends keyword is used to make B subclass and A superclass. This K is the instance variable of the subclass B. This is the parameterized constructor of the subclass B, and these are the parameters of the constructor. This is the super keyword, which is the super method, which will call the superclass constructor. That means this one inside the subclass constructor. This should be the very first statement inside the subclass constructor. And after that, another value assignment statement is there, which will assign the value of z into k. Then a method is written which will just print the values of I, j and k. Now here you can see that the method name is show again. In case of superclass, we have also used the same method with the same name and the same signature. That means its return type is same. Parameters are not there. Here also no parameters are there. That means the name of the method and the whole signature of the method, the type signature of both the methods are exactly same. The names are same, which is show. The return types are same, which is void in both the cases. There are no parameters inside the superclass version of the show method, and there are no parameters also in the subclass version of the show method. That means these two methods are exactly same. They have same name and they have same type signatures. If this is the case, and if one method is there in the superclass and another method is there in the subclass, then the subclass version of the method will override the superclass version of the show method. That means in this case, this show method, which is the subclass version of the show method, will override the superclass version of the show method, which is this one. Okay, that means if it gets overridden, that means this is the overridden method and this is the overriding method. Let me write it down. This is the overridden method, and this one is the overriding method. That means basically the subclass version of this show method will override the superclass version of this show method. That's why this superclass version of the show method is the overridden method, and the subclass version of the show method is the overriding method. So here method overriding is taking place. That means we have already learned about two constraints or two rules for method overriding to take place. One is that the name of the method, both the methods and the type signatures of both the methods should be exactly same. One method should be in the superclass and another method should be in the subclass. So if these two rules are satisfied, then the subclass version of the method will override the superclass version of the method. So here basically this show method will override this show method. Now what happens when a method is being overridden? That means actually the superclass version of the method will be hidden and it cannot be accessed. So now let us move on to the next part of the program, which is the main class. This is the main class and this is the main method. Now we all know that using the subclass object itself, we can access the subclass contents as well as the superclass contents, because subclass inherits the properties of superclass. So we can easily access the superclass contents as well as the subclass contents using a single object, which is the object of the subclass. That's why we have created only a single object sub ob, which is of the subclass, and these are the values that we are passing inside the constructor of the subclass. That means 3 will be passed into x, 6 will be passed into y, and 9 will be passed into z. And then inside this constructor we have called the superclass constructor. So 3 will be actually assigned inside I, 6 will be actually assigned into j, and 9 will be assigned into this k. Now, when we call the show method using the subclass object, as the subclass show method has already overridden the superclass show method, so only whenever you call the show method, only the subclass version of the show method will be accessible. The superclass version of the show method will be hidden and it cannot be accessed using the subclass object. So whenever we are calling the show method using the subclass object, it will always call the subclass version of the show method, because this show method has already overridden this show method. That means only this statement will be executed. So the output should be 369 and not this one. Now let me execute the program to show you the output. Then I'll come back to the program again and I'll show you how to access this show method even if method overriding is taking place. So just as I explained that the output should be the thing that has been written inside the subclass version of the show method, which is 3 space 6 space 9. Now let us go back to the program again. So this is how method overriding takes place in case of inheritance in a Java program. The method overriding is a very important concept using which we will implement the concept of runtime polymorphism or dynamic method dispatch that I'll show you next. Now the question is, if the superclass version of the show method is overridden, then we can never access the show method of the superclass. So this may seem to be a disadvantage, but actually it's not a disadvantage. It is very much beneficial for us to use the concept of method overriding in a Java program. Obviously, there are other ways to access the superclass version of the show method. But before going into that, let me explain once again what are the rules or constraints that must be applied in case of method overriding to occur. So these are the three rules of method overriding to take place in case of inheritance. The first rule says that the overridden method must be within the superclass and the overriding method must be within the subclass. that I have also explained while explaining method overriding. That means overridden method means the method that should be within the superclass, and overriding method means that the method of the subclass. So there should be a parent-child relationship between the two classes within which the two methods will be there. The next rule says that the names and the type signatures of both the methods should be exactly same, that I have just explained in the example program that I have shown to you. Here, there you can see that the both the methods have the same names show, both the methods have the same return types void, and both the methods have no parameters. That means the names and the type signatures of both the methods should be exactly same. Now if I put some parameters into the overridden method, there should be the same parameters with same data type in the overriding method also, otherwise the type signature will mismatch. And in that case, if the type signatures are mismatched, then method overriding will not take place. That should be called as method overloading in that case. That also I'll show you next with an example. So you have to keep in mind that the names and the type signatures of both the methods should be exactly same. No change in parameters or return types or names should be there. But in case of method overloading, you have learned that the names should be same, but the return type and or the parameters should be different. But in case of method overriding to occur, all the things should be same. The names as well as all the type signatures like the return types of the methods, the parameters and the data types of the parameters, the number of parameters, all the things should be exactly same for both the methods in order to method overriding to occur. Now the third rule says that the access specifier of the overridden method must be of equal or higher priority than that of the overriding method. Overridden method means the method that resides in the superclass. Now the access specifier of the superclass version of the method should be of equal or higher priority than that of the subclass version of the method. Now let me tell you about the priority of the access specifiers first. Here you can see the priority written for the access specifiers that are available in Java. So private has the lowest priority and public has the highest priority. And these two have same priorities. Now let us go back to the third rule of method overriding. So this says that the access specifier of the overridden method must be of equal or higher priority than that of the overriding method. That means the method that is inside the superclass can have access specifier that is of equal or higher priority than that of the method which is inside the subclass. That means you can put public in case of the overridden method and you can put default in case of the overriding method, or you can put default in both the methods, but you can never put default in case of the overridden method and public in case of the overriding method. Then that will violate this third condition, and in that case method overriding will not happen. Now let me show you these things inside the program that I have done just now. So coming back to the program, let us demonstrate each one of the three conditions one by one. The first one says that the one method should be in the subclass, which is a superclass, which is the overridden method, and the overriding method should be in the subclass, which I have already shown in this program. This A is the superclass and P is the subclass. The names and the type signatures of both the methods should be exactly same. Here you can see that both the methods have exactly same names and type signatures. Here suppose if we give one parameter which is an integer parameter, then here also you have to give one parameter which will be an integer parameter. And if you give no parameters here, then you also have to give no parameters here. That means the type signatures should be exactly same. That means the return types, the names of the methods, the parameters, the number of parameters, the data types of the parameters, all the things will comprise the type signature of both the methods, and those things should be exactly same. Now the third point says that the access specifier of the overridden method, that means of this method, should be of equal or higher priority than that of the overriding method. That means this method. So here we have not given any access specifier. That means it will be treated as default. Here also we have not given any access specifier. So it will also be treated as default. That means the access specifiers in both the cases are default. So they are of equal priority. That means it's perfectly okay in order to method overriding to occur. Now, another thing that the third rule says that the access specifier of the overridden method can be of higher priority. That means this one. So if we give public here, then it will be of higher priority. This access specifier will be of higher priority than this one. So that means this method, overridden method, has become stronger than the overriding method. That means default is actually wants to override public. So in this case, you will see that there is an error. Why? Because of the fact that default can never override public, because default is a weaker access specifier compared to public. That means the rule should be changed like this. The rule should be changed like this. So this is what I wanted to tell you, that the access specifier of the overriding method must be of equal or higher priority than that of the overridden method. Now why this is the case, why the overridden method, the access specifier of the overridden method cannot be of higher priority than that of the overriding method, that I have just shown you in the program. Now let me explain it to you why this actually happens, and let me show you the output, then it will be much more clear to you. So coming back to the program, I have already told that the public access specifier is written in case of the overridden method, and default access specifier is there in case of the overriding method. Now this overriding method will actually override this overridden method. That means the subclass version of the show method will actually hide the superclass version of the show method. But if this kind of method overriding should take place, then in that case a weaker access specifier cannot override a stronger access specifier. That means here this actually is happening, that a weaker access specifier default is actually wants to override a stronger access specifier public. This is what is happening here in this program that I have changed just now, that the overridden method has the access specifier public and the overriding method has the access specifier default. So a weaker access specifier is overriding a stronger access specifier, which is not permissible in Java. If you want to do this, then this program is going to give you an error. Let me show you the output, then it will be much more clear to you. So this is what we are getting after compiling the program. Show in B cannot override show in A because attempting to assign weaker access privileges was public. So this is the error that we are getting. This is because of the reason that a weaker access specifier default is being assigned to the overriding method, which is actually overriding a stronger access specifier, which was public actually. So this is not permissible in Java. Default, which is a weaker access specifier, cannot override a stronger access specifier like public. That means we cannot make the access specifier of the overridden method stronger than that of the subclass version of the method or the overriding method, but we can easily make it equal. That means I have already shown that when both the access specifiers were default, the overriding was taking place, that you have seen here. Similarly, if you make both the access specifiers of both the methods public, then also the method overriding will take place. Let me show you. So let me change it for you. Let me make it public. That means in both the cases, for both the methods, the access specifiers are public. That means the access specifiers of both the methods are of equal priority. Now method overriding will take place. So here you can see that the program is successfully executing. That means the method overriding is taking place because we have made both the access specifiers of same priority. Both the cases are public. So you can see that if you make both the access specifiers public, then also it will do method overriding. Or if you make both the access specifiers say default, then also method overriding will take place, because in both these cases the access specifiers of both the methods are of equal priority. That's why the method overriding is taking place. But if you make the access specifier of the overridden method stronger than that of the overriding method, then the method overriding will not take place, because a weaker access specifier cannot override a stronger access specifier. And that is the reason the third rule needs to be changed like this. That means what we actually have to do is that the access specifier of the overriding method must be of equal or higher priority than that of the overridden method. That means what we actually have to do is that we have to assign an access specifier to the overriding method, that is the subclass version of the method, which should be of equal or higher priority than that of the overridden method, that is the superclass version of the method. That means actually what we have to do is that we can assign a weaker access privilege here, and we can assign a stronger access privilege here, because a stronger access specifier can easily override a weaker access specifier, because public is stronger compared to this. This is no access specifier is declared, that means it will be treated as default. So public is stronger than default. So a stronger access specifier can easily override a weaker access specifier. There will be no problem in it. That's why the rule has been changed, and the rule has become like the overriding method should have an access specifier which will be of equal or higher priority than that of the overridden method. Here you can see that the overridden method has default access specifier, and the overriding method has a public access specifier which is of higher priority than that of the overridden method. Now if you compile and execute the program will execute successfully. See here, this is where I have compiled and executed the program again, and it's executing successfully and it's giving you the output. So the third rule of method overriding to occur should be implemented as the access specifier of the overriding method should be of equal or higher priority than that of the overridden method. If all these three conditions that I have mentioned are satisfied, then only method overriding will occur. Otherwise, method overloading will occur. In case of the access specifier case or the third rule, method overriding will not occur, not even method overloading will occur. In the third case, if the rule is violated, the program is going to give you an error. And in the second case, if the names and type signatures are not same, then method overloading will occur. Let me show you how. So I have changed the program a little bit. Here you can see that I have given a parameter into the overriding method, an integer parameter, and here there are no parameters. But the methods, the two methods are still in the superclass subclass relationship. That means the overridden method is there in the superclass, and the overriding method is there in the subclass. But inside the subclass method or the overriding method, I have added one parameter, one integer parameter, but here I have not given any parameter. So that means the type signatures are not same now. The type signatures have become different, although the names of both the methods are still same. Now in this case, method overriding will not occur, because the second rule that I have explained to you has been violated. That is the names and type signatures of both the methods must be exactly same, but the names are same here, but the type signatures are different. So method overriding will not take place. Instead, method overloading will take place. So still now you have learned the concept of method overloading, as the names of the methods should be same, but the return types and or the parameters of the methods should be different. And there was another rule of method overloading, which was all the methods should be in the same class. But today you have learned that although the two methods are in two different classes, whereas one class is superclass and one class is subclass, then also method overloading will take place. So method overloading will take place only if all the methods, all the overloaded methods are in the same class. This is not the case. Although the methods are in different classes, where you can see that the two classes have a parent-child relationships in between them, then also method overloading will take place, provided that the names of both the methods should be same, and the return type and or the parameters should be different. So here you can see that there are no parameters in the overridden method, and there is only a single parameter in the overriding method. So these are not overridden or overriding methods anymore. These methods are actually overloaded now. Here in the main class, you can see that this is the sub object that we have created, and using the object we are calling the show method, which is the superclass version of the show method. And using the same object we are calling the show method, which is the subclass version of the show method. And here there are one parameter, that's why we are passing an integer value into it. And inside this system.out.println, we are printing the values of I, j and k, and also x. So this should give you the output from the superclass version of the show method, that is 3 space 6. And this should give you the output from the subclass version of the overloaded show method, which is 3 space 6 space 9 space 100. Now let me show you the output. So this is what I have just explained. The first one is from the superclass version of the show method, and the next one is from the subclass version of the show method. So this is how you can see that by violating any one of the three rules, method overriding will not take place. Method overriding will take place only if all the three rules are being satisfied. Here you can see that the second rule of the method overriding is violated, which says that the names and type signatures of both the methods should be same. Here the type signatures are not same, although the names of the methods are same. That's why method overriding is not taking place. Instead, method overloading is taking place. So today you have learned that whether the overloaded methods are in the same class or in different class, method overloading will still take place if the type signatures of the methods are different. Now let me show you that if the method overriding is there in a program, then I have told you that the subclass version of the method, which is the overriding method, will override the superclass version of the method. So in that case, we will never get back the superclass version of the method. But there is obviously other ways to get back the superclass version of the method, and to execute whatever was written inside the superclass version of the method. Now let me show you how to do this. So there are basically two approaches using which you can access the superclass version of the method or the overridden method. Here I have shown you one approach where you can see that we have created a superclass object. We have passed the two values 10 and 20 into the superclass constructor, and using the superclass object we have called the show method. This will obviously call the overridden method, which is this show method. And using the subclass object, when we are calling the show method, it will obviously call the overriding method, which is this show method. So let me show you the output, then it will be much more clear to you. So as I have just explained, the first one is from the superclass version of the method, and the next one is from the subclass version of the method. So this is one way how you can access the overridden method. Let me show you another approach to access the overridden method. So this is another approach of calling the overridden method from inside the overriding method. Suppose you don't want to create the superclass object in order to call the overridden method. You just want to use only a single object in the program, which will be of the subclass. Now, if that is the case, then you cannot use the approach that I have just explained to you. You have to use this approach. What we are doing, we are using the super keyword to call the show method of the superclass from here inside the overriding method. So what we are doing, we are using the super keyword inside the overriding method, and then using the super keyword we are calling the show method, which is the overridden method or the method of the superclass. That means the superclass version of the show method will be called using this statement from inside the subclass version of the show method. So this will give you the output as 3 and 6. After that, this system.out.println statement will be executed, which will give you output as 3, 6 and 9. So you will get two outputs here in this case. One will be for this statement, which will be for this superclass version of the show method, which will give you 3, 6, and another will be for this system.out.println statement, which will be 3, 6, 9. But remember that in this approach, you will be having the same outputs for both the cases, or the same values for all the variables. That means the same values of I and j for this show method and for this show method also. But if you want to give two different sets of values into the variables, then you have to use the previous approach. That means you have to create an object of the superclass in order to call the overridden method. But here, if you don't want to create another object, if you don't want to waste your memory, then you can easily call the superclass method using the super keyword from inside the overriding method or subclass version of the method in order to access the overridden method. So here the super keyword will be of use in order to call the overridden method. But remember that you have to write down the statement um, inside the subclass version of the show method. You cannot write it down inside the main class, because the main class is not the subclass of a. So super keyword will be invalid here if you write it down inside main. So this should be the output. I have compiled the and executed the program here. So you can see that you're getting the same sets of values for the variables, and the first output is produced for calling the show method using the super keyword, and the next the next output is being produced for the system.out.println statement that has been written inside the overriding method. So this is all about method overriding. Now let's move on to the next topic of our today's lecture, which is dynamic method dispatch. Here you will see that by applying the concept of method overriding, how we can implement the concept of runtime polymorphism. But before going into the program, let me explain to you what is dynamic method dispatch and how does it help to achieve runtime polymorphism in Java. Method overriding forms the basis of one of the Java's most powerful concepts, which is dynamic method dispatch. This dynamic method dispatch is the mechanism by which a call to an overridden method is resolved at runtime rather than the compile time. Dynamic method dispatch is very much important because this is how Java implements runtime polymorphism. Now, we have already discussed about a fact that a superclass reference variable can refer to a subclass object. Java uses this fact to resolve calls to overridden methods at runtime. Now, let me explain to you how Java does this. When an overridden method is called through a superclass reference, Java determines which version of that method to execute based upon the type of the object being referred to at the time the call occurs. Thus, the determination is made at runtime. When different types of objects are referred to, different versions of an overridden method will be called. In other words, we can say that it is the type of the object being referred to and not the type of the reference variable that determines which version of an overridden method will be executed. Therefore, if a superclass contains a method that is overridden by a subclass, then when different types of objects are referred to, through a superclass reference variable, different versions of the method will be executed. Now let me show you an example program to make you understand how this concept is used in Java. So this is the program that demonstrates the use of dynamic method dispatch. Here you can see this is the superclass A where a method call me is there which will just print a statement. This B and C, both these are subclasses of the superclass A, and both these methods are overriding the call me method of the superclass A. So this is basically hierarchical inheritance that is happening here, because one superclass is there and more than one subclasses are there. So B inherits A, C also inherits A, so which is hierarchical inheritance. So for both the subclasses, there is method overriding which is taking place. This call me will actually override this call me, and this call me will also override this call me. Now this is the main method. Inside the main method, we have created objects for all the classes. This one is the object of type A, this one is the object of type B, and this one is the object of type C. Now this R is the reference variable of A class, which is the reference variable of the superclass. We have obtained a reference of type A. Now what we are doing, we have assigned the object of A class into the reference variable of the same class A. So no type mismatch is there. R will refer to the A class object. Now whenever this call me method will be accessed using this R object, so this will basically, this R will now basically will act as the uh, A class object, because we have assigned the A class object A into the reference variable R. So R will actually act as the A class object. So whenever using R, we will access call me. This will call A's version of call me method. That means this call me method. So this is going to give you this as the first output. Now what we are doing, we are assigning B, this object, into this R reference variable. Now B is the subclass B's object and R is the reference variable of superclass, and we know that a superclass reference variable can easily hold a subclass object. So B can easily be assigned into R. So in this case, R will now point to B, or R will now behave as B. So whenever we are accessing the call me method using R, so it will actually call B's version of the call me. That means this call me method. So this calling, method calling, will actually give you this as the second output. Next, what we are doing, we are taking another subclass object C, which we are assigning into the superclass reference variable R. So R will now point to C, because of the fact that a superclass reference variable can refer to a subclass object. So R will now behave as C, and whenever we are using R to call the call me method, it will call the C's version of call me, which is this call me method. And this method calling will in turn give you this sentence or this statement as the third output. So here we can see that this program assigns a reference of each of the type of the object that we have created in this program into the R reference variable, and this program is then using that reference to invoke the call me method of all the classes. Now as you can see here, the version of the call me method which is being executed is determined by the type of object being referred to. That means what type of object we are assigning into R, that will determine which version of the call me method will be called. Here we can see that we are assigning the A class object into R. That's why the A's version of call me method is being called. Here we are assigning B class object into R. That's why B's version of the call me method is being called. Here we are assigning C class object into R. That's why C's version of the call me method is being called. That means depending on the type of object that we are referring into the reference variable, the that version of the method of that class is being called. And this decision of which version of the method should be called. This decision is taken at the runtime. That means at the time of calling the method, which is the execution time or runtime. This is why we say that dynamic method dispatch or method overriding, along with the concept that a superclass reference variable can refer a subclass object, will implement the concept of runtime polymorphism. So here we can see in this program that which version of the method will be called, that decision is being taken at the time of the call occurs. That means when the call will occur at the execution time or the runtime of the program. So the call is being made depending on the type of object being referred to, and depending on that we will call that version of the method, and that decision which version of the method to be called is being taken depending on the type of object being referred to and at the time of method call, which is actually the execution time or runtime. That's why we say that method overriding, along with the concept that a superclass reference variable can refer a subclass object, will implement the concept of runtime polymorphism. So this is how runtime polymorphism is implemented. This is also known as dynamic method dispatch. Why the term dynamic? Because the decision of which version of the method will be called is taken at the runtime dynamically, not at the compile time, which is known as static polymorphism. Rather, the decision is being taken at the time of calling the method, or at the runtime, or at the execution time. That's why this type of polymorphism is also known as runtime polymorphism or dynamic polymorphism. So just as I explained, these are the three outputs that you can see on screen. Inside A's call me method, inside B's call me method, inside C's call me method. So in this case, at first this call me method is being executed, then this one, and this decision which call me method will be executed is being taken depending on the type of object being referred to, and this is done at the runtime or at the time of calling the method. That's why this is known as runtime polymorphism or dynamic polymorphism. Remember that in case of method overloading, which version of the method will be executed, that decision was taken at the compile time. That's why method overloading is used to call compile time polymorphism. But here you can see that method overriding, along with the concept that a superclass reference variable can refer a subclass object, is being both are being used to implement runtime polymorphism. Here you can see that the decision of which version of the method will be called is taken at runtime. That's why this is runtime polymorphism. So method overloading is basically compile time polymorphism, and method overriding, along with this concept, which is a superclass reference variable can refer a subclass object, will implement runtime polymorphism in Java. Runtime polymorphism is also known as dynamic polymorphism because the decision of which method will be called is being taken dynamically at the execution of the program. And in case of method overloading, it was used to call early binding because the binding of the object with the method was done during compilation. That's why it was used to call early binding. But here in case of runtime polymorphism, it is called late binding because the binding of the method to be called with the object that is being referred to is being done at the time of method call or at the runtime. That's why runtime polymorphism is also known as late binding. That means the binding of the method to be called with the object being referred to is being done at the time of execution of the program. So these are the three names that are associated with runtime polymorphism, uh, which is dynamic polymorphism or late binding or runtime polymorphism or dynamic method dispatch also. So this is how method overriding is mainly used to implement the runtime polymorphism concept in case of Java, which is a very important concept. Now the next topic of today's lecture is abstract keyword. As we are running out of time, so we will leave this concept for today. We will discuss this concept of abstract keyword, how it can be used before a class or before a method, in the next lecture. Thank you for listening to today's lecture. See you in the next lecture.